Manina upendo familia, karibuni to the Black Hot Fire Network 54 Correspondence Show. I hope that everyone is doing well on the 16th day of the month of December, the year 2021. It's actually 17 minutes past 2 p.m. right here in Nairobi. And I am happy that you have chosen to take your time and join us on this particular broadcast where we talk about different issues happening on the continent of Africa and also get to update you on what is happening within the 54 countries on the continent of Africa.
Black Hot Fire Radio, media for the 21st century.
Some people might like to consider it to be a 55 correspondence of Africa because depending on who you are, some might tell you that Africa has 55 countries, others will tell you that Africa has 54 countries, but for the sake of this particular broadcast, we focus on 54, which is why we have labeled or titled this particular broadcast the 54 Correspondence Show on the Black Hot Fire Network. In case you're joining us for the very first time, we want to appreciate you so much, and we hope that your day is coming along just fine. If not, things will eventually shape up. And today we are looking forward to having an engaging show. We shall be talking about different countries on the continent of Africa and also getting to add onto your knowledge of the continent of Africa. Some people tend to think they know about Africa. Personally, I would say I am learning. I do not know about Africa. I have not been to all countries, the 54 countries of Africa. So far, I've been to Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and also right here in Kenya. So I would consider those to be 4. And I would say I am also learning because I have 50 more countries to get to visit on the continent of Africa. For those of us who are asking why we have 55 for some people, it's because Sahrawi, some people want to recognize the Western Sahara as a country on its own. And that is why some people who do also consider Africa to have 55 countries. If you can hear me clear, please do let me know. Sometimes we might have an echo, but if you can hear me clear, please do let me know so that we can get started off with the show. But before we start off with our broadcast for today, I want to urge us to visit the official website, which is www.blackhotfirenetwork.com. And if you have been there, you already know that we have a lot of resources on the network website. And if you haven't been on the network website, this is a wonderful opportunity for you to be able to do so. Before we started off the show, we have played you a little bit of some Amapiano music. Amapiano is the most jamming style of music right now on the continent. We do have Amapiano. We also do have Afrobeat music. And if you do not have any of that on your playlist, you are truly missing out on a lot. So I would urge you to look for some Amapiano music. It's from South Africa. We do have some artists such as Kamon Fela. She is doing very, very well. And we also do have a DJ Mari Fossa, who is also doing very, very well from South Africa. And when it comes to the Afrobeat, we do have two top artists from Nigeria. We do have Burna Boy, and we also do have Whiskey. They have collaborated on a brand new song. I might be able to play it before we end up with our broadcast for today. But remember, if you haven't had some playlist playlist update for a minute, please make sure you do so. Update your playlist. You can check out the music on Spotify, and you can also stream the music on our radio, which is blackcotfirenetwork.com. I would urge you to download the app for our radio. It's available on Play Store. Just search for the Black Hot Fire Network, and you will find us right there on the app. It's very, very important that you do so. And before we start off the show as well, I want to thank everyone that has been with us on these in this year on the network this year, from January when we started out to this particular time of the year, the 16th day of December. We truly value and appreciate you and your support. It's not in vain. For those that have made donations, we truly appreciate. For those that have shared the links and also passed on the word about the Black Hot Fire Network, we also appreciate you in that regard. You might not be able to give all, support monetarily, but you are also able to share the information that you also offer or share with on the network with your friends, your colleagues, your relatives, and people like that. And therefore, we want to appreciate you so much for the little part or the most that you are doing. We truly want to value and appreciate you so, so much. My name is Spikes, in case you're joining us for the very first time. And on this particular broadcast, we talk about issues to do with African history, African economics, African political affairs, environmental issues, technological affairs, and everything else in between. So therefore, you are actually on the rightful platform. And in case you would like to reach us, you can simply do so by writing to us an email, shoot us an email. It's blackhotfireafrica@gmail.com. Or you can also you can go ahead and reach Keith on email, which is kcnewsam15@gmail.com. kcnewsam15@gmail.com. In case you wanted some clarification, or you have a question, or you have some suggestions that you would like to make, you can be able to reach us on those particular platforms. And today we shall be looking at different issues. We shall be talking about Uganda. But before we talk about Uganda, I want to take you all the way to West Africa, a beautiful West African country that I love, and that has had a history which is, a history which has been full of turmoil. If I might call it so, a history that has been full of turmoil. I am talking about Sierra Leone. If you have heard about Sierra Leone, you have heard about the blood diamonds. You know where they come from. Most of these blood diamonds have been mined from Sierra Leone, a country where people are supposed to be living well and living in rich in wealth, a lot of wealth. Right now, people are living in poverty in this particular country known as Sierra Leone. You have heard about the diamonds from Sierra Leone. It's a song, but have been made by Kanye West. I believe originally it was not by Kanye. But this has brought some spotlight on the plight of the people of Sierra Leone that have mined diamonds all their lives, but are still living in poverty because of the war and because of the turmoil and the pandemonium that has struck that particular country. One of the reasons being to poor leadership. You might ask yourself where Sierra Leone is actually on the map, but before we get onto that, let me share with us some interesting facts about Sierra Leone. Maybe you knew of these facts, maybe you didn't know about this particular fact, but for me, I would purpose one day to, tour Sierra Leone. Sometimes about 2 weeks ago, we had a brother we interviewed on this particular network, and we were talking about him and music and the history of Sierra Leone. We were not able to dig deep into that, but for today, I want to take us all the way into Sierra Leone. Enjoy this particular free ride. He's taking you all the way into Sierra Leone so that you can get to know some interesting facts about Sierra Leone, and maybe perhaps you might, already know some of these things, but this is a little bit on the same. No, that is This is not the video. This is a little bit of
Hello,
Sierra Leone.
explorers. Welcome back to another informative video and thanks for watching. As you all know, it's always a pleasure presenting to you some interesting but lesser known facts about the beautiful countries on the African continent. In this video, we're excited to present to you some lesser but known facts about the country of Sierra Leone. Officially the Republic of Sierra Leone, informally Ceylon, it's a country on the southwest coast of West Africa. It is bordered by Liberia to the southeast and Guinea to the northeast. Sierra Leone has a tropical climate with a diverse environment ranging from savanna to rainforests, and a total area of 71,740 square kilometers, and a population of 7.9 million people. The capital and largest city is Freetown. 16 ethnic groups inhabit Sierra Leone, each with its own language and customs. The two largest and most influential are the Timne and Mende. The Timne are predominantly found in the northwest of the country, and the Mende in the southeast, comprising a small minority. About 2% of the Creole people were descendants of free African American and West Indian slaves. Used in schools and government administration, Creole, an English-based Creole, is the most widely spoken language across Sierra Leone, spoken by 98% of the population. Creole unites all the ethnic groups in the country, especially in their trade and social interaction. If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our daily uploads. Sierra Leone is a Muslim majority country, 77%, with an influential Christian minority of 22%, and is regarded as one of the most religious tolerant countries in the world. Muslims and Christians collaborate and interact with each other very peacefully, and religious violence is very rare. The majority Christian and Muslim holidays are officially public holidays in the country, including Christmas, Easter, Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha. The current president of Sierra Leone is Julius Maada Bio. Its currency is the leone. So without any further ado, here are 10 things you probably didn't know about Sierra Leone. Number 1. The national symbol of freedom is a tree. The cotton tree is a historic symbol in Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone. According to tradition, former African American slaves landed on the shoreline and walked up to this giant tree and held a Thanksgiving service, praying and singing hymns to thank God for their deliverance to this free land. They settled here, the site of modern Freetown. The palm tree and the rice grain are also the national symbol par excellence. Immortalized in currency, song, and folklore, and valued for their central and staple contribution to everyday life. Different species of palms contribute to cooking oil, thatch roof, fermented wine, soap, fruits, and nuts. Number 2. The British sent free slaves here. Freetown is so named for a reason.
So you would see Freetown. This is Sierra Leone capital city known as Freetown, and this is where the British freed slaves were sent. And this country shares some similarities with the other country we have talked about on a previous episode of the 54 Correspondence. And we were talking about Liberia. For Liberia, the U.S. sent the freed slaves to Liberia, and for Sierra Leone, the British sent the freed slaves here. And that is why you do hear this particular city, capital city, being known as a Freetown. Freetown in Sierra Leone, which is the capital city. And there is a whole lot of, there was hope for the reintegration of these freed slaves that came from Britain. And, they got the opportunity to come back and start a new life in Sierra Leone. But things did not even work out the way they had hoped to for most of them.
Land bought from local Timne chiefs in the late 18th century became the home for resettled free slaves from Britain and North America, and of free captives taking off sea slave ships on the Atlantic after Britain passed the 1807 Abolition of the Slave Trade Act. The island was the final point of departure for many West Africans who have been sold into slavery across the Americas. In 1787, the British sent 400 former slaves to settle in modern-day Freetown. Most of the settlers died though. Then, in 1792, the British sent 1,200 former slaves living in Nova Scotia, Canada, to settle in Sierra Leone. In 1808, after the abolition of the British slave trade, the British sent more freed slaves to Sierra Leone after liberating them from illegal slave ships. Today, Sierra Leone is made up of descendants of these early settlers and the indigenous tribe of the Mende and Timne people. Number 3. Their history is built into a church. The pews and rafter in St. John's Maroon Church are recycled pieces of history, made from a ship that brought Jamaican slaves from Nova Scotia, Canada. The church was built in 1820, making it one of Freetown's oldest churches. It still stands there as a reminder of their past and a beacon of hope to the land they have come despite all. Number 4. They suffered through a 10-year civil war. Sierra Leone is among the many African countries that have gone through a civil war. Internal conflicts crippled the country from the late 1980s onward, culminating to the brutal civil war that took place from 1991 to 2002. Between 1991 and 2001, war between rival groups competing for control.
But when you look at these young men that are carrying guns and were involved with the civil war, they were being armed with weapons. And we all know that Sierra Leone does not manufacture weapons. So your guess is as good as mine. This was not a war of their own funding. This was funded from the outside so that the Africans in Sierra Leone can continue to kill each other where the resources are being taken. And that is the same thing that is happening in other different parts of the continent where you would find a war happening. You know, most of the time you'll find these particular young people, men and even children, young men and even children being armed with the weapons. But these weapons, you do know that they are not manufactured here. The funding is not from these particular people. These people do not even have the funds to even close themselves, but you'll find them in these military regalia and also the weapons. So you would also trace the money trail, and you'll find where or who is funding this particular war and for what purposes or for what ends. This was a war that lasted for so long from 1991, and so many people did lose their lives in this particular war. And people are still healing because 1991, 2001, this is not really a long time ago. This was about 21 years ago, and therefore the wounds are still fresh, if you might call them so.
Of Sierra Leone left more than 50,000 people dead and the country's infrastructures in pieces. It also displaced more than 2 million people who fled into neighboring countries. In 2001, United Nations forces began disarming rebel soldiers, bringing an end to the war. Since the end of the war, the government of Sierra Leone has undergone the arduous task of rebuilding the country's physical and social infrastructure while fostering reconciliation. Number 5. Diamond puts the country on the map. Although most of the population is engaged in subsistence agriculture, Sierra Leone is also a mining center. Its land yields diamonds, gold, bauxite. This country is one of the top 10 diamond-producing nations in the world, earning a lot of foreign currency from minerals. Unfortunately, the diamond industry has also been a great source of conflict and pain in Sierra Leone. On February 14, 1972, the country made headlines when the world's third largest gem-quality diamond called the Star of Sierra Leone was discovered in Kyoto. Sierra Leone is famous for blood diamonds that were mined and sold during 10-year civil war to raise money for weapons. Number 6. Sierra Leoneans love their radios. Because so many people in Sierra Leone do not know how to read, radios are very popular. About 85% of the people have access to radio, and about 72% listen to the
One
radio.
of the things that has contributed to this particular population not knowing how to read is because the education was interrupted. In this 10-year of a civil war, education was not going on as usual. So therefore, many people did ditch their learning and went into, just trying to live day by day and surviving in this particular era where there was a lot of killings from the civil war. So that is why the education system was affected and not many people were able to read or even write. And, now turn to the radio for the information. But the problem is, the radio has been used for propaganda. And that is why I do say you cannot really trust anything that the TV or the radio is telling you unless you're able to do your own research and find out, through other different means. Then you are still stuck there with the one source of information, which is mostly being used for European propaganda.
Daily. Number 7. Sierra Leoneans love rice. For almost all Sierra Leoneans, rice is the staple food, consumed at virtually every meal. A Sierra Leonean would often say, without any exaggeration, if I haven't eaten rice today, then I haven't eaten. It is often hard for outsiders to grasp the centrality of rice to daily existence in Sierra Leone. Many people, for example, have over 20 different words to describe rice in its variant forms, such as separate words for sweet rice, pounded rice, and the rice that sticks to the bottom of the pot upon cooking. Don't say you have eaten food unless you've eaten rice. Fruit and eggs for breakfast don't count. They eat rice with plaza leaf-based stew cooked with chili, onion, and palm oil. Many favor the cassava leaf dish, while others like the potato leaf version. Other rice accompaniment includes binge, which is beans, and the national anthem. We are not so nicknamed because everyone knows it and knows how to cook it. Almost all ceremonial occasions, such as weddings, funeral, initiation, and memorial services, demands the preparation of large platter of rice, distributed to guests until they are full. Number 8. Marriage is a sign of maturity in Sierra Leone. For all Sierra Leoneans, marriage is a mark of adult maturity and brings considerable prestige to the bride and groom. Specific custom varies by ethnic groups and socioeconomic status.
Like you do here from Sierra Leone, it's just like any other African country where we do have a lot of tribal groups, ethnic groups, about 11 of them in Sierra Leone. And you were talking about also the Gambia yesterday, talking about some of the groups in the Gambia. They have about 10 of them, which is a small country the size of province in other countries, comparative in other countries. But the thing is, all these different groups want to see themselves as running things. They want to be in power and control the order of, administrative order of the day. But that's a problem. Samuel, I don't know if that is Samuel. You're saying Aradis. Aradis, I don't know. Are you asking what is this? We are discussing about Sierra Leone, and you can see some jollof rice right there. That is Samuel. You're asking. Spikes, how have you been? I'm doing well. I saw you the last time on Telegram. I don't know what has happened, but I hope that you are doing well. And the rooster is ready for slaughter these particular holidays. If you would like to join us on the broadcast, feel free to do so. I was talking about Sierra Leone. Because in Sierra Leone, you have a bit of everyone in Sierra Leone. And I'm talking about our people. From Jamaica, we had people who were resettled, who had been taken as slaves and taken into, who came from Jamaica. Some of them are resettled back into Sierra Leone. Some of the people who were taken from Canada as slaves resettled back into Sierra Leone, and we were talking about that history. Some of the people who were taken from the Britain, most of them were taken from Britain and brought back into Sierra Leone, and they were resettled there. And I was just saying it was not a smooth sailing for these particular people that were resettled. The other day, I was comparing Sierra Leone and Liberia. These were two places. For Sierra Leone, even their capital city will tell you of their history. Their capital city is known as Freetown, where people who are the freed slaves who came up and tried to establish a new kind of a life. But it would have been very, very difficult, especially for people, maybe perhaps assuming you were taken from, through the transatlantic slave trade. You were taken from a place like Tanzania, and then with these resettling, you are actually now resettled in a place such as Sierra Leone. It might have been difficult because you do not have the rest of your family members there, and you're all trying to start a new life with people that you have coming from. So things were really much difficult. I will play a little bit more of the facts from Sierra Leone, and then we shall get into the matter of the transatlantic slave trade. We shall learn a little bit more before we talk about current affairs right here on the continent of Africa. You're saying I'm still trying to catch a rooster. It's all good, brother. I hope everything is good in clear down. Mr. Ike, then Mr. Ike Coffee. Is it Ike Coffee or Ike Coffee? I do not know, even till today, 2 years down the line or whatever time, I still do not know whether it's Ike or Ike. But thank you so much for joining us on the show. That is General Mosquito. And the Gold Professor, you are with us today. You're saying good morning, everyone. This is a Gold Professor. I hope this is an actual professor, a professor of maybe law, or a professor of I don't know what field you are a professor in, but nonetheless, we appreciate you taking the time and for being with us on the broadcast. Sister Lightbearer, thank you so much, sister. It's always a delight to have you tuning in. I thought we would also have Sister Nishia, but she is traveling. She will be in Tanzania real soon. Yesterday, she was at the JFK at the airport in New York. And so she left New York, I think, yesterday. So she should be in Istanbul, I bet, today. And then from there, she will connect either from Istanbul to Ethiopia, and then from Ethiopia to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, or maybe there's a direct flight. I'm not sure, but we are wishing her safe travels. The lady is also here. Zobi and Katie will be heading down to Dar es Salaam on Saturday. So from next week, they will also be bringing the live shows from Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, and it's always a good vibe. And of course, you're saying, yes, they do love the rice over there. It's everything with the rice, but the same thing. It's also in Nigeria. Jollof rice. Talk about Ghana. I bet also Ghana. They are also into their rice. There's also Sierra Leone, and I have seen sometimes back there was this festival. It was known as the Umoja Festival. I bet it was the Umoja Festival. It was organized by people from West Africa, brothers and sisters from West Africa. I think it was taking place in what part of the US was it taking place? Let me just check that up. Umoja Festival. Was it Umoja Festival? Umoja, which means unity. Umoja means unity. Umoja Festival. Let me see where it was being conducted. Is it in? It might have been Washington D.C. It might have been Washington D.C. I'm not sure. I will be confirming where it was, but I was saying people from West Africa, from Sierra Leone, from Ghana, they had the opportunity to come up and taste their foods, because food is essential part of the culture. Sister Nish, you're with us. Let us know where you have reached so far. I bet you might be in Istanbul. That is what I saw from the update on the website. I am not sure, but I hope that you're traveling well. You saying I'm a professor of martial arts and health education. My last name is Gold, hence Professor Gold. Okay, that's what's up. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. And I also Sister Nishi is also with us here. I thought maybe you all are still up there traveling on the plane, but it seems like you have got a break. And we are talking about Sierra Leone. So we go back into Sierra Leone and also talk about the transatlantic slave trade. And then you will see the kind of a damage that was done. And even until today, we do have an intergenerational, I might call it intergenerational trauma. You might call it so, because that is exactly what it is. And people have continued in that particular kind of
What usually begins when a man is able to assemble enough bride price, which is often a mixture of money and fine clothes, to give to the prospective bride and her family. He may be able to amass this himself, but often he has to ask his father and his father's brother for support. Almost all marriages used to be arranged between families, sometimes while the girl was still quite young. Increasingly, love marriages are more common, especially among those who have been to school. Number 9. Friday is Africana Day, when you wear your finest African print.
You can see some of that African print. It's really, really wonderful, and it's something to take a pride in. These are the attires right here. This is something really, really to take pride in. Apart from the wonderful rice that the people of Sierra Leone get to enjoy, their food is also amazing. Also, the attire you can see from here. It shows you this is also has some sense of royalty in it. You seem like you're royal. You're part of the royal. And this is what it is.
His father's brother for support. Almost all marriages used to be arranged between families, sometimes while the girl was still quite young. Increasingly, love marriages are more common, especially among those who have been to school. Number 9. Friday is Africana Day, when you wear your finest African print. Malama Thomas, named after the wealthy Creole merchant who built a brand home there to buy wax print, lace, damask, and more in every hue, pattern, and shimmer imaginable, is a market where.
So in Sierra Leone, you find people also speaking in Clio, like you do here. Some people who came from different parts and already settled there, and also people that are already there. It's a part of their language and their culture.
A lot of African prints are sold. Most sellers, especially women, carry the same inventory, but it's the buyer's staying power in the haggling game that determines where the sale is made. Once you have fabric, you need a tailor to make a dress for you, and for that you can find them all over the city. Once you have your outfit in African print, you are ready to be part of the in crowd on what is known as Africanas Friday, when almost everyone wears their finest African pride to work or to mask. It is such a beautiful sight to behold, as all those fabrics in the glory of all its colors are seen in town. Number 10. Sierra Leone has the largest natural harbor in Africa. The country owes its name to the 15th century Portuguese explorer Pedro da Sintra, the first European to sight and map Freetown Harbor. The original Portuguese name Sierra Leone, Lion's Mountain, referred to a range of hills that surrounds the harbor. The capital Freetown commands one of the world's largest natural harbors, and it's also the largest natural harbor on the African continent.
So I bet they should invest heavily in this region of moving goods. They have a natural harbor, so it means it's much more easier to also be able to up the infrastructure. And also they're saying it's from the hill, from the mountain of the lion, which is where the name has come from, and they have held onto it. But apart from that, I wanted to go into the matter of the history that has to do with the transatlantic slave trade, also connected with the people of Sierra Leone. And this is what I want to share with us from the hub. It has been a hub for transatlantic slave for a long, long time. I'm on your backup channel, sir. I'm the only one on here in the chat. No, you aren't. That is, I know you aren't. You're likely watching us from the smaller channel, Gold Professor. That is why you might be seeing only your comments are on there. Please find us on the other channel. It's Kid Newsam. Just search for Kid Newsam, or just type in the same title of the video, which is Uganda travelers. Uganda travelers are stopped for COVID vaccine. For vaccination. You can check us out on the other channel, which is Keith Newsam. I bet you are on the smaller channel. Sometimes you might find yourself on there, like Sister Lightbearer the other day. You might find yourself on the other smaller channel, and that is a Black Hot Fire Africa. That is where you are tuning from. But you can also join us on this other bigger channel, which is Keith Newsam. We are running the stream on both channels, and you can be able to see the rest of the comments from the family who are also on that other channel. That is why maybe you're wondering what's going on. But nonetheless, let me take us all the way into this story of Sierra Leone and the long history of slave trade from Sierra Leone, and see what kind of a damage was done. And even till today, I'm just saying, people still suffer the post-traumatic, the PTSD intergenerational.
A brutal equation ruled the New World. Black equaled slave. And to fulfill their hunger for slaves, the British turned to the place that many other Europeans had turned already, Africa. Sierra Leone was once a major hub for the slave trade. More than 300,000 people were taken from here and shipped to the New World in bondage. But the first slave traders in
this is 300,000 people, according to this report. They say more than 300,000 people were taken from this region and are taken into the New World for slavery. Most of these people did not even make it to these destinies that they were bound for. And, they were also disconnected from their family. Maybe some of your family would have been taken to a place like, North America. Others would have been taken to South America. And, from there, you are disintegrated. As a family, you never to return again to become one family.
This place weren't Europeans. They were other Black Africans. Africans practiced slavery long before they ever saw a white person. All across this continent, slaves were part of a system based not on race, but on ethnic difference and brute power.
But I would say the Arab actually came in first and started these slave trade even way before the British came in and started these slave trade. So I would say first and foremost, the Arabs, not even the American themselves, the Arab were brutal with these slave trade. And the thing is, because there was a disintegration into ethnic groups, when you're trying to weaken the other ethnic group, what used to happen is that you would go into a war, and maybe perhaps you're worrying over resources, or maybe perhaps you're worrying over something. And then we have one community fighting another against another different community. That is after people disintegrated into communities. And then what used to happen is that people used to capture some of the members of the other different community. Let's say we have the Madinka and the Fulani fighting in a country such as Senegal. We have the Madinka fighting against the Fulani, because the Madinka are the predominant group there. So the Madinka would be fighting against the Fulani, and they would capture some of the men or the children from the Fulani. And then after that, they would also trade these, to weaken them. They would, thinking that they were going to weaken them, they would trade these people that they had gotten into slavery to the Arabs. The Arabs were the ones that initially were buying the slaves. And after that, what they didn't know, I'm just using Madinka as an example. What the Madinka didn't know is that the next time you will also have now, the trade would grow so fast, and the trade would grow so big, such that the demand for slaves grew big, and even slaves will also be taken from your own community. And therefore, when the Arabs got back and the demand for the slaves was going big, they would also capture some of these people and put them, sell them. And apart from that, the slave trade grew so big that we also did have the Europeans also coming in and making wanting to cash in on this slave trade and take these people from Africa, especially from the western coast of Africa, and also to the eastern. All around the continent of Africa, we did have slaves being taken from these places. It's not just in West Africa. It's not just in the Gambia. It's not just in Senegal. It's not just in Ghana. Not just in Nigeria. But I would say for the bigger part of where the slaves were mostly taken from, I would say it was West Africa, even though that does not mean slaves are not taken from other parts of the continent. But we have to reckon with this brutal history. And from there, we also have to know what we can do. Apart, if we are not united, then eventually we all weakened. And united we stand, and but divided we fall, and we are easily conquered. And that is exactly what did happen. I bet if we did not have this tribalism, this division into small ethnic groups, we would have been much stronger. It would have been difficult for anyone to come on the continent and try to conquer us, because we had the big numbers, only that we were not organized. We were disintegrated into small ethnic groups, communities, and they are weakened, and eventually we became a much weaker society, not able to fight back against these invaders and colonizers and slave traders. These are a little bit of some things you might not have known about the transatlantic slave trade.
They didn't know about the transatlantic slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade involved the transportation by slave traders of enslaved African people, mainly to the Americas. The slave trade regularly used the triangular trade route and its Middle Passage, and supposedly existed from the 16th to the 19th centuries. The vast majority of those who were enslaved and transported in the transatlantic slave trade were people from Central and West Africa, sold by other West Africans or by half European merchant princes, while in a small number were captured directly by the slave traders in coastal raids and brought to the Americas. Except for the Portuguese, European slave traders generally did not participate in the raids because life expectancy for Europeans in sub-Saharan Africa was less than 1 year during the period of the slave trade because of malaria. Ship owners regarded the slaves as cargo to be transported to the Americas as quickly and cheaply as possible to be sold as labor on several plantations, as well as domestic servants. The first Africans kidnapped to the English colonies were classified as indentured servants, with a similar legal standing as contract-based workers coming from Britain and Ireland. However, by the middle of the 17th century, slavery had hardened as a racial caste, with African slaves and their future offspring being legally the property of their owners. In the early 21st century, several governments issued apologies for the transatlantic slave trade. If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. Despite the loads of information out there are several things about this dark time which many of us may or may not still know about. We were able to narrow this into 10 things you probably didn't know about the transatlantic slave trade. Number 1. The transatlantic slave trade was not only a triangular trade. The triangular trade wasn't always triangular, as it is mostly asserted, because it also took a bilateral form. We commonly think of the Atlantic slave trade as a three-leg affair, where slavers sailed from European ports carrying manufactured goods, traded those goods for captives on the African coast, and then sailed to the New World, sold their prisoners, and returned to Europe, completing the triangle. But much of the trade to Brazil, however, was bilateral, where slavers left Rio de Janeiro, headed to Angola, and came straight back to Brazil. What's more, there were many other countries and groups involved in the dark trade who did not necessarily take the triangular route. Number 2, it started long before the date believed. The Spanish merchant Juan de Cordoba is believed to have first transported captured Africans to the Americas in 1502. The first slave voyage direct from Africa to the Americas is believed to have sailed in 1526, but then even before, Africans were brought over as slaves directly from Europe, and native inhabitants of Americas were enslaved by European explorers. The Portuguese began trafficking African captives in the 1440s, long before the Wars of the Roses had begun in England. But it wasn't initially a transatlantic trade, as in the early days, enslaved Africans were brought to Portugal or to Atlantic islands like Madeira to work in agriculture. This indicates that the slave trade started long before the recorded time. Number 3. The number of Africans traded is much higher than projected by historians. Because of inadequate records, the number of people taken from Africa through enslavement remains unknown. Based on the shipping records, historians estimate that between 9 million and 12 million people were taken out of Africa by European slave traders and delivered alive on the other side of the Atlantic. An untold number, however, died resisting capture in the slave raids, died during the forced march to the coastal regions, died in slave forts while awaiting transport, and also died en route as they traveled across the ocean. The lowest number of the total loss of life is estimated to be around 20 million people, hence the numbers written down are much lower than the actual figures. Number 4. The journey was brutal on both the passengers as well as the sailors. A triangular trade route known as the Middle Passage, through which slaves were transported, was long and extremely deadly. Depending on the weather, this voyage would take between 3 to 6 months, but by the end of the slave era, it took 6 weeks or less due to faster ships. The passage was so brutal that the ships not only lost many of the people being transported as slaves, but the crew as well. The mortality rate for sailors and slave ships was approximately 20%. Slave ships varied in size and passengers' capacity, but they all shared the common trait of being inhumanly brutal. African slaves spent most of their days below deck in cramped quarters and were brought on deck only for short periods of forced exercise. Research published in 1794 calculated that a man was given a space of 6 feet by 1 foot 4 inches, a woman 5 feet by 1 foot 4 inches, and girls 4 feet 6 inches by 1 foot. The air below deck was hot, stale, and filled with incessant smell of vomit, sweat, sickness, and death. Water was restricted to 24 ounces a day.
If you look closely into all these statistics that have been shared, like you hear, the estimation was about 12 million people that are actually transported from the continent of Africa through these transatlantic slave trade. But these might even be double or even more. It might have been maybe even 24 million, or they always do underquote. And this number also reminds me about the number of people that were killed during King Leopold's regime in the Congo. They always do say that it was just about about 2 million, but I do believe this was a bigger number. Let me just confirm what number Google says the number of deaths. Number Africans killed. King Leopold II, Congo. What they do say for King Leopold, they always do say that King Leopold established Belgium as a colonial power in Africa, and under his rule, 10 million people died in the Congo Free State, in the Congo. But I would also bet you that during King Leopold's reign in the Congo, maybe more than 10 million people did get to die. And so when you hear these numbers are being given, these are not true numbers, and this does not show the true reflection of how the matters were on the ground. When you hear that these ships were transporting 12 million people, I would tend to think that this might even have been double, about 24 million people taken in those in the number of years that the transatlantic slave trade was happening. But nonetheless, let me play a little bit more of the same as we continue with the 54 Correspondence show. Right here, I do see a comment. We were the original slave owners. The Africans are on the continent, brutal physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, before the European came to buy slaves from them. Yes, exactly. That is what was happening. We did have the Arabs. What used to happen is that we used to have different communities fighting. And when these communities were fighting, like I was giving an example, in West Africa, a country like Senegal, you do have different ethnic groups. So you'd have one African ethnic group, maybe the Madinka, fighting against the Fulani. And so what used to happen is that they used to go and kidnap, let me just say kidnap for lack of a better word, they used to go and kidnap some of, or capture, they used to not really kidnap, they used to capture some of the warriors from that other different community once they had defeated them during a war. And when they conquered them, they used to punish them by selling them into slavery to the Arabs, because the Arabs did get to realize that there is a divide here and there is an opportunity for us to go and make money from this and also get free labor for our people in the Arab countries. So we used to have the people that had been captured used to be sold as slaves to the Arabs, and then eventually the European also caught on and found the opportunity in the slave trade. And eventually, that is when the European came in and decided to also send in their own mercenaries, send in other different groups to come in the name of explorers to come and find places to come and take the slaves from, and that is eventually how the slave trade grew. But originally, I would also blame our people, because originally, as Africans, we do not want to reckon with that particular history, saying that it is the African himself that was involved with the slave trade, and then after that, the Arab, and then after the Arab, we went on to the European, and with the European, it was more brutal, and you could hear what the conditions were on the ship. It was crazy, and yeah, Shepherd, the name was abduct. Yeah, the name was capture, all abduct, and even till today, you find many Nigerians that sold other Nigerians, not even just Nigerians, West Africans, or just Africans. Let me just call them Africans, selling other Africans. It is slave trade. But we are always talking about, yes, we never have that conversation about what consequences they should have been for those individuals that took Africans and sold other Africans in the name of punishing their enemies. And these were not even their enemies. The African did not even realize their enemies. And even till today, we still do have the African not realizing who the enemy is. People think that the other African is the enemy, but the other African is not the enemy. If we still had these people on the continent, I believe perhaps we should have had a fast tracking of our numbers would have been good even till today. And perhaps we would have been at a much better position of acquiring power, because in numbers is power in numbers. But if you are weakened through the slave trade that did happen, taking millions of people from the continent, it means that we would not even stand any chance for becoming a real power after the commencement, or after the starting of these slave trade. You would see all the evils. I don't think there is any movie, or there is any story that have been told, or there is any record that has been kept that would depict the full extent of the damage and the evil that was done during the transatlantic slave trade. I don't think there is anything like that. People only imagine, and the imagination is not even as vast or even as big to capture the kind of an evil and the kind of a devastation that was done during this transatlantic slave trade. Of course, right now we do not have anyone that did survive. Maybe perhaps that will give that particular story, but the way I understand it was during those centuries, it was crazy and very, very inhumane. People were treated as commodity. People were treated as commodity, not as human beings. But let me share a little bit more of the facts from the transatlantic slave trade before we talk about what is happening right now with the issue of Uganda, where Ugandans are also being coerced into taking this particular job, and what might happen eventually. And let me share these with as well.
And the diet consisted mainly of horse beans and rice. Number 5. Most of the slaves never went to America first. Prior to 1518, the Spanish monarch refused to allow slaves to be transported directly from the continent of Africa because of a fear they would introduce non-Christian religious practices to native populations in America. Only a tiny percentage of the Africans came directly to North America, as the vast majority of African slaves were first sent to the Caribbean and South America, with most half of all slaves transported from Africa sent to Brazil. That changed on August 18, 1518, when King Charles V granted a charter.
But that is why you would find Brazil, apart from the continent of Africa, the biggest contingent of the biggest number of black people being in Brazil, because most of them were first taken there, and the others are also taken to the Caribbean before they were taken into the Americas. The Americas, I think it came a little bit later on, just like you hear from this presentation. I agree with them on these as well.
To Lorenzo de Gorevot to transport 4,000 slaves directly from Africa to the Spanish-American colonies. The Spanish king circumvented the law established by his grandparents by allowing slaves to be converted to Christianity during the voyage across the Atlantic Ocean. This action led to a broad expansion of the slave trade in the Western Hemisphere. Number 6. The average cost of a slave in America in 1850 was $400. It is not even possible to fathom the thoughts that there was a time when a price tag was placed on a human being.
There was a $400, and I believe they might even have exaggerated, because in some cases you'd have bought slaves, like with Black Friday, where you buy like maybe 10 slaves, and you're given another extra one for free. Buy 10 get one free, or buy 20 get two free, or something like that. And some of them were seen not even as human. Like I'm just saying, they were seen as commodity, and with commodity, people do not even have a sense of value, so therefore even traded or given for free to go and work on these particular plantations, because they did not see any value in people, in human life.
But that is one of the dreadful things that came with the transatlantic slave trade. Across Europe and the Americas, slaves were sold like goods and services in our markets today. The price placed on the slaves depended on their gender, color, strength, time, and also depending on the country. The average cost of a slave in America in 1850 was about $400, which is about $12,000 in today's money. Number 7. There was an internal slave trade within America long after the slave trade was abolished. The transatlantic slave trade that brought slaves to the United States was dwarfed by the internal domestic slave trade. Even after Congress passed the act prohibiting importation of slaves, which took effect in 1808, the domestic slave trade grew as the African slave trade tripled up to the period of the Civil War. Approximately 1.2 million men, women, and children, most of whom born in America, were displaced by this domestic slave trade. Number 8. There were other slaves besides those who suffered the transatlantic slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade was only about half the total slave trade out of Africa. From AD 650 to 1900, Islamic traders were estimated to have exported 10 million slaves into northern Africa, Arabia, Yemen, Iraq, Iran, and India. They were shipped across the Sahara Desert, the Red Sea, and the Indian Ocean. Many millions more were also enslaved but kept on the continent of Africa. Number 9. The oppressors were compensated where slave trade was abolished. The end of any oppressing act.
You will see the crocker received the reparations when the slave trade was abolished, but the slave themselves did not get anything off. The descendants of the slaves did not get anything off this. I think this is the most brutal part of it, that the oppressors were given compensation for having lost, quote unquote, their property, whereas the people themselves, the oppressed, the victims, actually not got nothing. And even until today, we have heard about different leaders from different countries talking about how sorry they were because of this.
Means that the act has been seen as a bad thing to humanity, and so was supposed to be the end of the slave trade. Those to be compensated are supposed to be the oppressed, but in the case of the transatlantic slave trade, the oppressor got compensated. As far-fetched as it may sound, when Britain abolished slavery, compensation was paid to 46,000 slave owners, but on the other hand, the 800,000 freed slaves received nothing. If that was not the height of ironic arrogance, then words are still missing to explain the motive behind such a move by the British government. Number 10. During a Roman festival, slaves and their owners swapped roles. Saturnalia was an ancient Roman festival in honor of the god Saturn, held on 17th December of the Julian calendar, and later expanded with festivities through to the 23rd of December. The holiday was celebrated with a sacrifice of the Temple of Saturn in the Roman Forum, and a public banquet, followed by private gift-giving, continual partying, and a carnival atmosphere that overturned Roman social norms. Gambling was permitted, and masters provided table service for their slaves. A common custom was the election of a king of the Saturnalia, who would give orders to people which were to be followed and preside over the merrymaking. During this ancient Roman festival, slaves and their owners.
There's a whole lot of wickedry going on. I don't want to hear about the festivals that they have done. A lot of debauchery that normally goes on with these particular festivals. But the head of the irony with this whole particular story is that the 46,000 slave owners were compensated, but the 800,000 slaves didn't even get a dime. So you can see the irony, and it doesn't get any wicked than that. But I do see Shepa, you saying the Arab slave trade happened 1,000 years before the European slave trade. Yes, it was going on, but I would say like the African used to capture and abduct the other warrior communities that they were in conflict with, and sell these people to the Arabs. So you would also see the damage that came in, and the Europeans saw that the Arab was making a lot of money and growing wealthy from the trading in this. And I was just saying, there's nothing that gets to describe by this level of wickedness. There's not even a story or a movie or any script that has been written that will demonstrate what happened to these two our ancestors that were taken, others that still remain on the continent, and others that still return to the continent. It was really, really evil. But Sister Nishu saying, yes, sure did. And you're saying PukeTube is still eating. And also I had got in the comment from the brother Gold Professor, who says he's a professor of martial arts and and health education, and the last name is called. So, Samuel, we hope that you're doing well, and everyone else that is joining us on the broadcast for today. I just wanted to make a highlight on what is going on with Uganda and also in South Africa. Simona, now that you are with us, I wanted to put you into task, asking you now that because the medical parole has been declined or has been revoked for the former president Jacob Zuma, who was involved in corruption and fleecing the accounts of the country. Do you think that now he has been ordered to go back into jail and spend his holidays in jail? Do you think this will also spark another protest in South Africa, or do you think these things are a little bit more calm now? That is a question to the brother Shepo Simona. I wanted to ask you whether you think that there will be a return of these protests that will be protesting the arrest and the jailing of the former ex-president of South Africa, who is known as Jacob Zuma, who was involved with alleged corruption, where a lot of money was misappropriated. He was getting kickbacks, or he was getting bribed for the contracts that had to do with a French company that was supposed to supply weapons or military equipment in South Africa. And for this company from France to get the tender, they were said to have put in some money into Jacob Zuma's pocket. And this is one of the cases. There are so many other cases where there was a misappropriation of funds and a corruption leveled against the president. But this is one of the most popular ones. So I was just want to ask Brother Simone, do you think that there will be a return of these protests in the streets of South Africa? Or do you think the South Africans are past that now and they have decided that Jacob Zuma, the former president, should carry his own cross? Please do let us know. I want to get that from you even as we continue, and you would let us know what you think. Exactly, you saying exactly, they kidnap our people, period. This is the way to make excuses. And assist Simone, you're saying Africans captured in other blacks was a minor part of the slave trade. I agree with you. And also, Sister Liberia, you're saying exactly, spikes. And those were white people though. I agree with you on the same. But I want to take us all the way to what is happening in Uganda, and it seems like I had mentioned about it yesterday on the Africa Today show. One of the brother brought up this particular matter on what is happening in Uganda. But the travelers from Uganda are being asked to present their proof of vaccination. And this was at a roadblock, at a roadblock that where the travelers were being stopped. So in Kasese, which is also in Uganda, they were saying that in Kasese there is a task force that have been put together by the government in Kasese. The COVID-19 District Task Force, with the help of security forces, have embarked on a forceful vaccination exercise for people who they say have deliberately refused to get vaccinated. The police mounted roadblocks along the Mbambara, Kasese, Fort Portal Highway, with all motorists and travelers asked to provide proof of vaccination before continuing with the journey. And this is ahead of the forced mandate in Uganda. And in Uganda, sometimes you think about Uganda, and the only thing I know positive about Uganda is that the president allowed people to go into his country while they were chased out of their own country because of a civil war. That is the only thing I know positive that has to do with Uganda, because when people were chased out of the DRC Congo, the president Museveni gave them a home. When people were chased out of Sudan and there was fighting in Sudan, Museveni in Uganda gave them a home. When people were chased out of Rwanda during the 1994 genocide, Museveni gave them a home. So you will find that Uganda is like the place where everyone else goes to when things are not working out, and when there is upheavals and pandemonium and political chaos in their own countries. That is the only positive thing I have seen with Uganda. But when it comes to infrastructure development or any other kind of development, Ugandans are always prioritizing on the wrong things. Instead of prioritizing on economic development, instead of prioritizing on political cohesion and things like that, you would find Uganda prioritizing on things like now making roadblocks and stopping people and asking them whether they have gotten jabbed. And also their schools have been suspended. I don't think there's any learning going on in Uganda right now because they were told they would resume school next year in 2022. After having like a whole year break. And I also get to wonder, when you stop kids from going to school for a whole year, what do you expect will happen to them when they go back to school? They will have a hard time also catching up, or even have a hard time readjusting to be able to go back. But in Uganda, people have continued to live in ignorance, and also because the level of education there is also very, very difficult to attain. And also right now, like I said, the schools were suspended. They were saying that there will be the spread of the COVID, and therefore they do believe that there should not be any learning going on, and the kids have been at home for about a year now. And Sometimes you hear stories coming from Uganda. I'm not trying to make a bad image of Uganda, but sometimes you'll hear about stories from Uganda. For example, the story about the people who are given a bleach. They were told to drink the bleach. They were told this is miracle water. This is a miracle water, and if you drink this water, you are going to be healed. You are going to receive a miracle. And that was by Mzungu, by these Mzungu who had come up and set up an NGO and also churches in Uganda. But people, because of the ignorance and the poor system, the poor educational system in Uganda, that is why you hear these stories coming from Uganda. The only worst story, apart from that, is the only story that came in Zimbabwe when people were being told that they are getting tickets to go to heaven, and they were supposed to buy tickets to go to heaven for $20 in Zimbabwe, and people bought the tickets. That is only worst story that I've had from across the continent of Africa. So many things happen on the continent of Africa, but those two stories, they do break your heart when you hear stories that people are taking miracle water, which is bleach. They don't know what's going on. They are being told it will help them and make them, change their lives. Or you hear people are being told they're going to buy tickets for $20 to heaven. And or you hear about a story from Zimbabwe, not Zimbabwe, sorry, but Zambia. You remember, I've shared this particular story from Zambia. I find it to be one of the most fascinating, but I think it was a joke. If you listen to this particular story, you might think it was a joke. So I'll just share this particular video as we finish. Let me know if you think this was true, or let me know if this was a joke. I bring you stories from Africa, and today we were talking about what is happening now with a little bit of our history, and also winding up with a space mission, with a space program. It is supposed to be a space program that was put together by the former president of Zambia, and he said he wanted to put in place a space program. People were still in hunger in the 1970s, but he thought it was wise for him to first and foremost put together a space program team, that he would send to space, and to go do some research and some study, then come back with the data. And this is how the story went. It's not a good story, but let me know if you think it was a true story or a joke. Even as we wind up on today's episode of the 54 Correspondence Show, this is how the mission went. Let me pull these up real quick, and you can make a determination of yourself as we wind up. This is the last story, and then we shall be out over here. These are embarrassing, but anyhow, it is just another story here.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for Zambia. The space race, America versus the Soviets, good versus evil, democracy. In the space race. Meet Mukaka Nicoloso, a self-proclaimed Afronaut in Zambia in the 1960s. He opened the National Academy of Science, Space Research, and Philosophy in 1960 near Lusaka, a culty organization where he trained astronauts, or astronauts. His goal? The moon, and then Mars. The training consisted of swinging.
No, that is not the one. I guess it's the one. Yeah.
On swing sets and jumping up and down whilst clapping in synchronization and rolling down hills in barrels. According to himself, he's the one in the Cape, he had a really good rocket ship design, but he lacked fuel.
Yes, this is the rocket launching site, and my rocket is just here.
He even tested one of his rockets by launching it in a catapult. To solve said fuel problem, he approached both the United States and the USSR and offered them a deal. In exchange for fuel and technology, they would get his brilliant ideas, on the one condition that when they eventually did land on the moon, the Zambian flag would go up first. The plan was to launch his rocket, the Dikalu-1, containing a 17-year-old girl and 2 cats, and fly to the moon. Following this, convinced there was life on Mars, he would launch another rocket that would put Zambia on Mars just days after launch on Zambia's first Independence Day on October 14, 1964. But the launch never happened. The Colosso, a clearly driven man who thought very highly of himself, believed his technology to be 7 years ahead of the Soviets and the United States. He even accused them of stealing his technology, despite the fact that to this day there is no evidence of what that technology even was. It's easy to look at this whole thing and think, that's a joke, right? Well, it wasn't, unless he didn't share the punchline with anyone. Despite the ludicrous nature and execution of his endeavor.
That's a bad look right there, but nonetheless, sometimes you hear stories. But I do think we need to get into investing in a real research and development. Not these hula baloo kind of stories where you do hear things are happening like these in any kind of a way, and people are not really serious. But yes, the problem is with the perpetual continued state of poverty that people have been putting on the continent of Africa.
First of all, let me thank you.
People have not been able to really focus on research and development because we have been in a perpetual state of poverty. Not many African countries, I bet, apart from South Africa and maybe perhaps Egypt, we don't have any other countries really that are big on research and development. So I think that story was a joke. Let me just go with that. That story was a joke. And he was supposed to fly, and he approached the USSR. He also approached the US. They were supposed to get on a deal, but the deal didn't get through. But anyhow, that was a joke. That was a joke. So family, we're waiting up with today's episode of the 54 Correspondence Show. It's always a delight. I also do hope that you also get to catch up with Sister Nishi in Tanzania. I hope you are able, Sister Nishi, I hope you will be doing some of the videos are from Tanzania. We'll have to see how Tanzania is around this particular time of the year. And also, Sister Lightbearer, I also do hope that you are also putting out wonderful content as always. And who else is with us for today? Let me see. I think I have to finish that video. Let me just finish that video. I know it's a joke. It's not a good look, but I have to finish this video. Even as we are getting out over here, and it's not really good.
What he was doing was very inspirational. In a country that had just come to the end of a long struggle for independence, he showed them that they could not only walk independently, but they could run in a space race. Swish. The movement fizzled out after America put a man on the moon in 1969. The Colosso wasn't the only man who thought he could outrun the big players in the space race. Meet Bob of the Bob space program. In 1974, former Aerojet aerospace engineer and pioneer in rocketry Robert Truax assisted Evel Knievel with his jump across Snake Canyon atop the SkyCycle X2, a rocket which Truax himself designed.
That is a little bit on the same, but I thought I would find the actual video. There is another video that is much better than this one, but I wasn't able to find it. But nonetheless, we shall wind up, and I wish you a happy and productive remaining part of the day. In whatever your endeavor is, please pursue with optimism and positivity, and you will achieve positive results in whatever you do. That is my quote in point here. To be blind is dangerous. Yes, it's actually very, very dangerous. And, Shepo Simondo, do you have Afronauts in do you have Afronauts in South Africa? I would love to know, because if at all there was any country that is focused on space mission or space program, that would be South Africa or Egypt. So I'm not sure whether you do have Afronauts or astronauts or such in South Africa. But nonetheless, Africa should also be serious on research and development. But we need to get past the basics and then get onto that right here on the continent of Africa. I will leave you with this particular wonderful Afro beat. This is also from South Africa. Not really some Afro beats, but this is some Amapiano from South Africa. Until next time, much peace and love. Have a wonderful, productive part of the day. So are you saying Zuma has a huge support and following? Jailing this man will spell disaster for the country, but the law has to prevail. I agree with you 100%. But now I'm just wondering, I hope people do not get back to protest, because this is not helping. You're putting down infrastructure and it's crazy. But I do hope that Of course, he will be dealt with by the law, but also at the same time, I hope people are also sober with this particular matter. They do not want to make it about the man; they have to make it also about his actions. And I agree with you; the law has to deal with him, and he will be spending his holidays in jail. I believe he has gone back, so he will be spending his holidays in jail. This is a former ex-president, and we do hope that also South Africans are all also waking up from this corruption as well as the continent of Africa. Because if we did have the same going on for the rest of the continent of Africa, then you would have people being held responsible. It doesn't matter whether you're a minister, a president, a prime minister, whatever you might be, but you are dealt with equally by the full force of the law. Then people would stop from getting to engage with all these corruption that is crippling economies across the continent of Africa, and then we will be able to head somewhere. And that is my thought on the same.
You are now tuned to DJ Zemi on the
I don't know how you're going to keep up with the smell. Sister Nisha is actually on transit and traveling, and you know on those particular planes. You know who else is coming to the continent for their holidays. You know who else is traveling to Tanzania. It's all these are beasts, sitting right, left, and center, and you might need to also, I don't know, you just need to cover your nose because that's what's going on, and you might they might stuff you. To everyone that has been supporting the Black Fire Network, we want to appreciate you. Thank you so much for sharing the links. For those that have been supporting monetarily, you can also use a Cash App, Mr. Black Fire, or also use the official website. It's www.blackfirenetwork.com. Let's continue engaging on the network website. We also do have the social network on the site. You can share with us your videos, your opinions, your new information from around where you are from, or what is happening with us as a Black people. We want to continue building each other up and, of course, sharpening each other's minds, because iron sharpens iron sharpens iron, and we are able to build together as a people. Thank you so much, Sister Nish, Sister Lightbearer, and also Simono. Thank you so much. I don't know, I think we had General Mosquito earlier on, and also everyone else that was with us on the broadcast for today. Gold Professor, thank you so much. And also Samuel from Clarendon, Jamaica. We love and appreciate you, and also the wonderful Sister El Zubeir Michelle. I want to say Kwaheri.